So I just broke the busk on my MCC16C. It's been years since I've broken a busk. So I'm replacing a broken busk on this corset, and so far what I've done is cut the old busk out of the back. I did not try to preserve the back fabric. What's going to happen is that the front is going to become the new back. So I've added these little bits of bias tape. Those will anchor the hook side and help to keep it aligned straight when I sew it in. I'm going to use a piece of Bach Jacquard ribbon, which is really thick, sturdy ribbon, on the front, and also a piece on the back, sandwiching the busk between those. I've lined up the ribbon with the busk, and now I'm marking where the hooks are with little pieces of tape. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the front and back ribbon, stitch them together, but only in these areas between the hooks. I've got my two pieces of ribbon pinned together, and I'm going to be stitching just sections between the tape marks. So I'm doing this on the machine, but you certainly could do it by hand, and I have done it by hand before. What I'm going to do, as you can see, I'm going to be stitching just inside the edge. Now the two pieces of ribbon are joined at the edge, and they can be wrapped around the busk with the hooks poking through. So when I stitch this down, I'll have it pulled away from the hooks. So I'm just using my thumbnail to find the inside edge, feel for it, of this half of the busk and marking with pins. So right inside that edge, I'm going to make a basting stitch. And if I were going to do this by hand, I would go ahead and just make a finished hand stitch. But the basting stitch will serve as a guide for the sewing machine. So as I'm basting, I'm pushing the needle right against the edge of the busk so that I'm creating a really tight pocket there between the edge of the ribbon and that stitched line. And you would do the same thing if you were hand finishing this, skipping the basting stitch, going straight for a proper finished stitch. You'd also be right up against the bone of the busk, pushing with your needle to keep that pocket really tight. Since I'm stitching this down on the machine, I want to be careful not to let the needle strike the busk. I've broken some needles that way. So I'm using the center of the foot, that channel, lining that up with a basting stitch. I've changed the needle position from center to left. I still have to be careful that I'm not coming too close, do it slow, so I'm not going to let that needle break. Since I'm sewing through multiple layers and it gets pretty thick, here's the needle I'm using. Now with this half of the busk stitched in place, I'll just add more stitching to this edge of the ribbon to lay it flat, and I'll take the bottom and top and fold them over and stitch. The peg side of the busk starts out the same way, anchoring it with small pieces of bias tape. These anchors don't need to be particularly tight, by the way, and this doesn't need to be held perfectly straight. This step of using these anchors is just to hold the busk down to the corset. So you can see it's in there pretty loose, lots of wiggle room. This time I've sewn my back and front pair of ribbons all the way through with no gaps. Before I add my ribbon, I'm going to line up the two sides of the busk, match them up to get the placement correct. I've got the two sides lined up now, and now I'm just taping down the peg side so that it'll hold its position. And now I can sandwich that peg side between my pair of ribbons. For now, the pegs stay covered up by the ribbon, I've taken pins, pushed them right up against the edge of the busk to create a nice tight channel. Now I'm just going in and finding those pegs by feel and marking them. I've taken my ribbon back off, and now I'm going to take a sharp tool, any kind of pokey tool, and poke through those marks. I want the holes just barely wide enough to poke the pegs through. Now that the pegs have holes to go through, I can go ahead and remove the tape. Just as I did before, I've made a basting stitch along the inside edge of the busk. And if you're hand stitching, that would be a finished proper stitch instead. This time I'm lining up the basting stitch with the edge of the foot so that the foot won't run into the pegs. And there's a sewing machine stitch to the right of the basting stitch. Just as I did with the first half, I've stitched both here and a line of stitching here to hold the ribbon flat. And I've folded over the top and bottom. And I'm just going to hand stitch on the back to secure it. So here's the finished repair. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good, and it'll extend the life of the corset, so I can get a few more years out of it. Hi, Kestrel.